We will be able to cure her, Argus, said Dumbledore patiently. Professor Sprout recently managed to procure Professor Sprout recently managed to cure some mandrakes as soon as they have reached their full size. I'll have a potion made that will revive Miss Norris. I'll make it, Lockhart butted in. I must have done it 100 times. I'll make it, Lockhart butted in. I must have done it 100 times. I could whip up a mandrake restorative draught in my sleep. Excuse me, said Snape icidly, but I believe I am the potions master at the school. There's a very awkward pause. You may go, Dumbledore said to Harry, Ron, and Hermione. They went as quickly as they could without actually running. When they were up from Lockhart's office, they turned to an empty classroom and closed the door quietly behind them. Harry squinted at his friends' darkened faces. Do you think I should have told them about the voice I heard? No, said Ron without hesitation. Hearing voices no one else can hear isn't a good sign, even in the wizarding world. Something in Ron's voice made Harry ask, You do believe me, don't you? Of course I do, said Ron quickly, but you must admit it's weird. I know it's weird, said Harry. The whole thing is weird. What's with the writing on the wall about? What was the writing on the wall about? The chamber has been opened. What was that supposed to mean? You know, it rings a sort of bell, said Ron slowly. I think someone told me about a secret chamber at Hogwarts once. Might have been Bill. And what on earth is a squib? Said Harry. And to his surprise, Ron stifled a snicker. Well, it's not funny really, but as it's Filch, he said. A squib is someone who was born into a wizarding family, but hasn't gotten any magic powers. Kind of the opposite of Muggle-born wizard. But squibs are quite unusual. If Filch is trying to learn magic from a Kiwi spell course, I reckon he must be a squib. It would explain a lot, like why he hates students so much. Ron gave a satisfied smile. He's bitter. A clock chimed somewhere. Midnight, said Harry. We'd better get back to bed before Snape comes along and tries to frame us for something else. For a few days, the school could talk little else but the attack on Miss Norris. Filch kept it fresh in everyone's minds by pacing the spot where she had been attacked, as though he thought the attacker might come back. Harry had seen him scrubbing the passage on the wall with Mrs. Scocker's all-purpose magical mess remover, but to no effect. The words still gleamed as brightly as ever on the stone, which Filch wasn't... When Filch wasn't guarding the scene of the crime, he was still skulking, red eyes through the corridors, lunging out on unsuspecting students, and trying to put them in detention for thinking things like breathing loudly and looking happy. Ginny Weasley seemed very disturbed by Miss Norris's fate. According to Ron, she was a great cat lover. But you haven't really gotten to know Miss Norris, Ron told her abrasively. Honestly, we're much better off without her. Ginny's lips trembled. Stuff like this doesn't often happen at Hogwarts, Ron assured her. They'll catch a maniac who did it and have them out of here in no time. And I just hope he's got time to petrify Filch before he's expelled. I'm only joking, Ron added hastily as Gurney watched. The attack has also had an effect on Hermione. It was quite unusual for Hermione to spend a lot of time reading. But she was now doing almost nothing else. Nor could Harry and Ron get much of a response from her when asked what she was up to. And not until the following Wednesday did they find out. Harry had been back in potions where Snape had made him stay behind to scrape where Snape had made him stay behind and scrape tubble worms and scrape two worms off desks. After a hurried lunch, he went upstairs to meet Ron in the library and saw Justin Finch-Flowey, the Hufflepuff boy from herbology, coming towards them. Harry had just opened his mouth to say hello when Justin caught sight of him, turned abruptly, and sped off in the opposite direction. Harry found Ron at the back of the library, measuring the history of magic homework Professor Binns had asked. Professor Binns had asked for a 3-foot-long composition on the medieval assembly on European wizards. I don't believe it. I'm still 8 inches short, said Ron furiously, letting go of his parchment, which sprang back into a roll. And Hermione's done 4 feet 7 inches, and her writing's tiny. Where is she? Where is she? Asked Harry, grabbing the tape measurement and unrolling his own homework. Somewhere over there, said Ron, pointing along the shelves. Looking for another book. I think she's trying to read the whole library before Christmas. Harry told Ron about Justin Finch fletchingly running away from him. Sorry. Don't know why you care. I thought he was a bit of an idiot, said Ron, scribbling away, making his writing as large as possible. All that junk about Lockhart's being so great. Hermione emerged from behind the bookshelf. She looked irritable, and at last seemed ready to talk to them. All copies of Hogwarts, a history have been taken out, she said, sitting down next to Harry and Ron. And there's a 2-week waiting list. I wish I hadn't left my copy at home, but I couldn't find it in my trunk with all of Lockhart's books. Why do you want it? Said Harry. The same reason everyone else wants it, said Hermione, to read up on the legend of Chamber of Secrets. What's that? Said Harry quickly. That's just it. I can't remember, said Hermione, biting her lip, and I can't find the story anywhere else. Hermione, let me read your composition, said Ron desperately, checking his watch. No, I won't, said Hermione, suddenly severe. You had 10 days to finish it. I only need another 2 inches. Come on. The bell rang. Ron and Hermione led the way to History of Magic bickering. History of Magic was the dullest subject on their schedule. Professor Binns, who taught it, was their only ghost teacher, and the most exciting thing that ever happened in his classes was his entering the room through the blackboard. Ancient and shriveled, many people had said he hadn't noticed he was dead. He had simply got up to teach one day and left the body behind in an armchair in front of the staff room fire. His routine was not varied in the slightest sense. Today was as boring as ever. Professor Binns opened the notes and began to read in a flat drone. Like an old vacuum cleaner, until nearly everyone in the class was in deep stupor, occasionally coming to long enough to copy down a name or date, then falling asleep again. He had been speaking for half an hour when something happened. When something happened that had never happened before. Hermione put up her hand. Never happened before? Professor Binns, glancing up at the middle of the deadly dual lecture in the International Warlock Convention of 1289, looked amazed. Granger, Professor, I was wondering if you could tell us anything about the Chamber of Secrets, said Hermione in a clear voice. Dean Thomas, who had been sitting with his mouth hanging open, gazing out of the window, jerked out of his trance. Lavender Brown's head came up from her arms, and Neville Longbottom's elbow slipped off the desk. Professor Binns blinked.